Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 21. He visits the wreck and obtains many stores from it. Again thinks of quitting the island. Has a remarkable dream. There are some secret moving springs in the affections which, when they are set a-going by some object in view, or be it some object, though not in view, yet render present to the mind by the power of imagination, that motion carries out the soul by its impetuosity to such violent, eager embracings of the object that the absence of it is insupportable. Such were these earnest wishings that but one man had been saved. Oh, that it had been but one! I believe I repeated the words 1,000 times, and the desires were so moved by it that when I spoke the words, my hands would clench together, and my fingers press the palms of my hands, that if I had had any soft thing in my hand, it would have crushed it involuntarily, and my teeth and my head would strike together and set against one another so strong that for some time I could not part them again. Let the naturalists explain these things and the reason and manner of them. All I can say to them is to describe the fact, which was even surprising to me when I found it, though I knew not from what it should proceed. It was doubtless the effect of ardent wishes and of strong ideas formed in my mind, realizing the comfort which the conversation of one of my fellow Christians would have been to me. But it was not to be. Either their fate or mine, or both, forbid it. For till the last year of my being on this island, I never knew whether any were saved out of that ship or no, and had only the affliction some days after to see the corpse of a drowned boy come up on shore at the end of the island which was next the shipwreck. He had on no clothes but a seaman's waistcoat, a pair of open-kneed linen drawers, and a blue linen shirt, but nothing to direct me so much as to guess what nation he was of. He had nothing in his pocket but 2 pieces of 8 and a tobacco pipe. The last was to me of 10 times more value than the first. It was now calm, and I had a great mind to venture out in my boat to this wreck, not doubting but I might find something on board that might be useful to me. But that did not altogether press me so much as the possibility that there might be yet some living creature on board, whose life I might not only save, but might, by saving that life, comfort mine own to the last degree. And this thought clung so to my heart that I could not be quiet night or day, but I must venture out in my boat on board this wreck. And committing the rest to God's providence, I thought, the impression was so strong upon my mind that it could not be resisted, that it must come from some invisible direction, and that I should be wanting to myself if I did not go. Under the power of this impression, I hastened back to my castle, prepared everything for my voyage, took a quantity of bread, a great pot of fresh water, a compass to steer by, a bottle of rum, for I had still a great deal of that left, a basket full of raisins. And thus loading myself with everything necessary, I went down to my boat, got the water out of her, and got her afloat, loaded all my cargo in her, and then went home again for more. My second cargo was a great bag full of rice, the umbrella to set up over my head for shade, another large pot full of fresh water, and about 2 dozen of my small loaves or barley cakes, more than before, with a bottle of goat's milk and a cheese, all of which, with great labor and sweat, I brought to my boat, and praying to God to direct my voyage, I put out, and rowing or paddling the canoe along the shore, I came at last to the utmost point of the island on that side, viz., northeast. And now I was to launch out into the ocean, and either to venture or not to venture. I looked on the rapid currents which ran constantly on both sides of the island at a distance, and which were very terrible to me, from the remembrance of the hazard I had been in before, and my heart began to fail me. for I foresaw that if I was driven into either of those currents, I should be carried a vast way out to sea, and perhaps out of reach or sight of the island again, and that then, as my boat was but small, if any little gale of wind should rise, I should be inevitably lost. These thoughts so oppressed my mind that I began to give over my enterprise, and having hauled my boat into a little creek on the shore, I stepped out and sat me down upon a little rising bit of ground, very pensive and anxious, between fear and desire about my voyage. When, as I was musing, I could perceive that the tide was turned and the flood come on, upon which my going was for so many hours impracticable. Upon this, presently it occurred to me that I should go up to the highest piece of ground I could find and observe, if I could, how the sets of the tide or currents lay when the flood came in, that I might judge whether, if I was driven one way out, I might not expect to be driven another way home with the same rapidness of the currents. This thought was no sooner in my head but I cast my eye upon a little hill which sufficiently overlooked the sea both ways, and from whence I had a clear view of the currents or sets of the tide, and which way I was to guide myself in my return. Here I found that as the current of the ebb set out close by the south point of the island, so the current of the flood set in close by the shore of the north side, and that I had nothing to do but keep to the north of the island in my return, and I should do well enough. Encouraged with these observations, I resolved next morning to set out with the first of the tide, and reposing myself for the night in the canoe under the great watch-coat I mentioned, I launched out. I made first a little out to sea, full north, till I began to feel the benefit of the current which set eastward, and which carried me at a great rate, and yet did not so hurry me as the southern side current had done before, and so as to take me from all government of the boat. But having a strong steerage with my paddle, I went at a great rate directly for the wreck, and in less than 2 hours I came up to it. It was a dismal sight to look at. The ship, which by its building was Spanish, stuck fast, jammed in between two rocks. All the stern and quarter of her was beaten to pieces with the sea, and as her forecastle, which stuck in the rocks, had run on with great violence, her mainmast and foremast were brought by the board, that is to say, broken short off. But her bowsprit was sound, and the head and bow appeared firm. When I came close to her, a dog appeared upon her, who, seeing me coming, yelped and cried, and as soon as I had called him, jumped into the sea to come to me, and I took him into the boat, but found him almost dead for hunger and thirst. I gave him a cake of my bread, and he ate it like a ravenous wolf that had been starving a fortnight in the snow. I gave the poor creature some fresh water, with which, if I had let him, he would have burst himself. After this, I went on board. But the first sight I met with was two men drowned in the cook-room, or forecastle of the ship, with their arms fast about one another. I concluded, as is indeed probable, that when the ship struck, it being in a storm, the sea broke so high and so continually over her that the men were not able to bear it, and were strangled with the constant rushing in of the water, as much as if they had been under water. Besides the dog, there was nothing left in the ship that had life, nor any goods that I could see but what were spoiled by the water. There were some casks of liquor, whether wine or brandy I know not, which lay lower in the hold, and which the water being ebbed out I could see, but they were too big to meddle with. I saw several chests which I believe belonged to some of the seamen, and I got 2 of them into the boat without examining what was in them. Had the stern of the ship been fixed and the forepart broken off, I am persuaded I might have made a good voyage, for by what I found in those 2 chests I had room to suppose the ship had a great deal of wealth on board, and if I may guess by the course she steered, she must have been bound from the Buenos Aires or the Rio de la Plata in the south part of America, beyond the Brazils to Havana in the Gulf of Mexico, and so perhaps to Spain. She had no doubt a great treasure in her, but of no use at that time to anybody, and what became of the rest of her people, I then knew not. I found besides these chests a little cask full of liquor of about 20 gallons, which I got into my boat with much difficulty. There were several muskets in a cabin and a great powder horn, with about 4 pounds of powder in it. As for the muskets, I had no occasion for them, so I left them, but I took the powder horn. I took a fire shovel and tongs, which I wanted extremely, as also 2 little brass kettles, a copper pot to make chocolate, and a gridiron. And with this cargo and the dog, I came away, the tide beginning to make home again. And the same evening, about an hour within night, I reached the island again, weary and fatigued to the last degree. I reposed that night in the boat, and in the morning I resolved to harbor what I had gotten in my new cave, not to carry it home to my castle. After refreshing myself, I got all my cargo on shore and began to examine the particulars. The cask of liquor I found to be a kind of rum, but not such as we had at the Brazils, and in a word, not all good. But when I came to open the chests, I found several things of great use to me. For example, I found in one a fine case of bottles, and of an extraordinary kind, and filled with cordial waters, fine and very good. The bottles held about 3 pints each, and were tipped with silver. I found 2 pots of very good saccades, or sweetmeats, so fastened also on top, that the salt water had not hurt them, and 2 more of the same which the water had spoiled. I found some very good shirts, which were very welcome to me, and about 1.5 dozen of linen white handkerchiefs and colored neckcloths. The former were also very welcome, being exceedingly refreshing to wipe my face on a hot day. Besides this, when I came to the till in the chest, I found there were 3 great bags of pieces of 8, which held out about 1,100 pieces in all, and in one of them, wrapped up in a paper, 6 doubloons of gold, and some small bars or wedges of gold. I suppose they might all weigh near 1 pound. The other chest I found had some clothes in it, but of little value. But by the circumstances, it must have belonged to a gunner's mate, though there was no powder in it, but about 2 pounds of fine glazed powder in 3 small flasks, kept, I suppose, for charging their fowling pieces on occasion. Upon the whole, I got very little by this voyage that was of any use to me, for as to the money, I had no manner of occasion for it. 'Twas to me as the dirt under my feet, and I would have given it all for 3 or 4 pair of English shoes and stockings, which were things I greatly wanted, but had not had on my feet now for many years. I had indeed gotten 2 pair of shoes now, which I took off the feet of the 2 drowned men whom I saw in the wreck, and I found 2 pair more in one of the chests, which were very welcome to me. But they were not like our English shoes, either for ease or service, being rather what we call pumps than shoes. I found in this seaman's chest about 50 pieces of 8 in royal, but no gold. I suppose this belonged to a poorer man than the other, which seemed to belong to some officer. And I think we'll pause here and we'll try and finish this chapter in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys, as Tigger says. Ta-ta for now.